Thank you for tuning into today's episode. We are going to be doing a Lightroom tutorial on how to photo edit. We are going to be taking you into Lightroom and teaching you different techniques on how to edit photos, and also watch how I edit my photos so you can get some ideas and some tips and tricks on how to do it. I hope this video will help you and you will learn something from this. So let's get started by jumping into Lightroom. We have chosen today 3 different photos. Let's go to our library and I will show you the photos we have chosen. We have chosen photo 1, photo 2, and photo 3. We are going to start with this photo in front of you. Now, for those who don't know, if you want to jump into the Developer tab, you just hit D on the keyboard. If you want to jump into the grid mode, which is where your library of all your photos are, you hit G. Now, a really cool trick, once you're in here, you could also hit G for the grid, or you can hit E to show your photo while you're in the grid mode or library tab. This will allow you to view a bigger photo, so that if you're searching through to see what it is, you can jump between G for your photo gallery, as I call it, and then your E for your photo mode. This is different from your developer mode. Your developer mode, going back to library, your developer mode allows you to pull up all these different tabs on the side here, which we will explain in a second on what they do and what they are. Right here, you have on your left side, you have your navigation window. This is what shows you everything that you are looking at for presets and different things like that, and your color effects that you do before you actually do it. You can hover over that, an item, and it will show you what it does. Down below, you have a setting called preset, which will give you all these different color presets. And currently right now, mine is not changing. Sometimes, and I haven't figured out why, but sometimes it doesn't actually change this navigation window. Occasionally you'll get that, but it doesn't for me currently. You have all these different presets you can program in your own also, but you got presets that are already pre-programmed into Lightroom that they give you. And there's many different Lightroom presets you can do. We will go into tutorials later episodes on how to create your own presets. Just today, we're just talking about Lightroom and just the basics and getting into a little bit of editing. You also have down here a Snapshot tab, which basically just is a snapshot of what you've taken in your screen. So if you're doing video editing or things like that, you can take snapshots here and there of different steps. You get a history tab. This is a very important tab that you want to keep track of, because this will allow you to go back and keep a record of everything that you've done within the program. So if you decide that 3 or 4 steps before, or 3 or 4 steps that you've done, you want to go back and take them out, then you can do that too. You can remove them. It basically just keeps a record of everything that you are working on, and you can go back to any part of your image editing at any point. So if you find a stage where you made a mistake or you like something different, then you can go back. Also, down below the history tab, you got the collections tab. This is a very interesting tab, very underutilized. I personally don't reuse it, but what a collections tab is it allows you to create these temporary tabs. So if you want to have a tab that's just for anything red or anything landscape, you can label each image as they come in when you import them, and it will give you basically a image catalog that you can kind of make your own. Here's my landscape photos, or here's my portraits. I don't specifically use them because Lightroom has so many features within it that make it a little easier to use, and my cataloging system helps that. This is just my personal opinion. There's many useful ways to use catalogs, but I personally just don't use them. One of the features that you can do with the catalogs, which we'll get into discussion later if anyone wants that, you can do a cool feature where it allows you to make catalogs for certain photos that you want to keep in there, like one to sell or one to put on Facebook or one to put on Instagram. But again, with all the features within there, there's not really a big reason personally for me to use them. All right, now moving on, we're going to go to the right side of the screen. You have your histogram right here, which will tell you your color levels, and we'll get into that when we go into editing. You have all your different tools underneath here, which is your crop tool. You have your spot removal tool, which you can use the Q to do that one. You also have the red eye correction, which is not as needed these days, but you can. It is there if you want to use it. We have the graduated filter. You can use M for that. You also have the radial filter, that is Shift plus M for the keyboard shortcut. And this one is the adjustment brush. You can use K to get to that one. Down here you have your basics tab, which allows you to do a lot of editing. We'll get into that later. You have your basics tab, your tone curve tab, your Hsl Color tab, your color grading tab, your detail tab, lens correction tab, your transformation tab, your effects tab, and your calibration tab. Going one by one, your basics tab allows you to do your basic edits, your exposure, contrast, highlight, shadow, white balance, or your whites, your blacks, and then you have a presence section, which allows you to do your textures, your clarity, your dehaze, your vibrance, and your saturation. We'll talk more about this in a later video. You also have your tone curve panel, which allows you to adjust your reds, greens, blues, whites, and just your channels in general. You have your highlights, lights, darks, and shadows you can adjust. Your midtones, your highlights, and your shadows. This is a very amazing tab, which I will show you how to use, and this can allow you to take your photos to the next level. We will be talking about this one specifically today in this episode. Closing this tab, we will go to the Hsl Color. I very rarely use this, but you can. You can adjust specific hues, saturations, and saturation, luminosity, or all of it. Not really something I use. This is more for like if you want to isolate certain colors, like if you want to take the blues and adjust the blues in your skies, for instance, or you want to take the greens and take the saturations of your greens down. For instance, like in this image, we have a lot of blue in here. So if I want to go to the saturation tab, just for example, and take the blue and bring it up a little bit, you will notice it gets a little more bluer, if that's even a word. It gets more blue added into your photos. If you take it back, it'll drop some of that blue out. You can essentially just take it all out and make it gray. Or one trick, just a heads up, if you click on any of these tabs, for instance, like if it's out here, and you click on this tab, like the word blue, double tap on it or double click on it, it'll take you right to 0. Next tab we got is the color grading tab, which I don't really do a lot of. This is more for video work and things of that nature, which is new to Lightroom. I'm going to not talk too much about it because I don't know much about color grading. So if you want to know any more about that, I can do research on it and figure out how to use it. But in this video, we're not going to be talking about color grading. That's a whole nother topic, and that can get pretty big and in depth. So I'll leave that to later episodes. The next one is your Detail tab, which shows a little image here. This is your Sharpening tab, sharpening with your amount of sharpening, your radius, your detail, and your masking. You also got your noise reduction in here, your luminance noise, your detail, and your contrast. Currently, your detail and contrast are blacked out. This is because you need to adjust the luminance slider to be able to make them come forward. The minute I adjust the luminance slider, as you saw, it went here. Note something interesting is you saw over here on the left side, your history slider has shown everything that I've done. So let's go back here and reset that. Now you notice as I reset it, it goes back to luminance. So, and then these go blacked out, the detail and the contrast. You got your color slider, your detail slider, and your smoothness slider, which is in the noise reduction panel. That also, in the detail panel, you get this cool feature up in the corner here called the adjust dial zoom area by clicking in the photo. So you click on it, and then you can click on a photo, and as you notice, down in the little window here, you see the image change. So I can go, for instance, click on this sky, and now my image is going to sharpen to that detail. So that you're going to see that zone, and you can actually, what it does is it'll focus in on that zone. For instance, like if I click on these rocks right here, I can see a more focused zoomed in, and I can adjust detail on a minute scale. Like if you're doing someone's eye or things like that, that's where that becomes handy. You can also close that window, or you can open that view. Going down to our next tab is our lens correction. This is a very important one. What I always suggest is when you first open your image to go to this tab, and you can remove chromatic aberration. You can enable profile correction, which means your lenses, and you can click the lenses. For my camera, I will show you, we are looking at a Canon, and then you click on the camera that you want, and then it will tell you what camera it is. It's a Canon RF. Mine is not a Canon. It's a Sigma. They do not have it on here. Huh. Oh, you know what it is? Because the make of the lens, that's what it is. Not a Samsung, it's a Sigma. It's a Sigma 28-70. And as you noticed, it did a lens correction. You can also fix your distortion right here with this button. As you notice on the screen, it shows up the grid. You can do your distortion that way. Your vignetting can be fixed with this too. Or you can manually go in and fix distortion and defringing and things like that and vignetting. I generally stick to the profile tab under lens correction, and that does enough. You can also go into your next tab, which is transform, and you can do a really cool thing. This image doesn't really need it that much. You can go into auto, and it will fix your horizons and make it level. You can do vertical, vertical, horizontal, rotation, aspect, scale, X offset, Y offset, and then constraint crop. Because what happens when you do this correction, it'll crop in a little bit, minutely crop in and take care of it. You can also do like a thing like this, and click this icon here, and it'll show this window, and you can draw lines, and it will correct for you. If you draw 2 lines, then it auto corrects the image that way. We will go back out of that one. And going down to our next tab is the effects tab, which is basically your post crop vignetting tab. You can hit style and then select what you want it to be: highlight, color, or paint overlay. And then you get to choose all these different ones, like the amount, the midpoint, the roundness, the feather, and the highlight. I don't really use this too much, but it's there if you want it. You can adjust your grain, the amount of grain and noise you have in there for like a more filmic effect. That's kind of cool. Not very effective in the work I do. You can also do calibration, which you can load in calibrations for your camera, and it will detect your different camera models and calibrate your settings to that. So that's a little bit more about the tabs. We are going to go into editing this photo, and we will go into touching on editing another photo. We got 3 photos to edit. We will edit this one to start. First thing that needs to be done on this photo, and or what we need to start doing, is we need to go set up our canvas and set up our layout so it's less confusing. So in Lightroom, you can hide panels. And one of the cool features is you can hide non-workable panels. What that means is you can go in and take a panel like, say, for instance, the basic tab. And then I have, say, the tone curves. Well, I don't want to have to scroll it back up every time I want to see this. If I can make it easier so that every time I click on one and only want that certain one open, that all the other tabs will automatically close. How you do that is you go down to a spot where there isn't anything, like right here, and right click. And then once you do that, you'll come up with this contextual menu, and you go down to solo mode and click solo. And now you have set it up to be able to, on the right side, to be able to only show the panel that you're working in. Let's do that on the other side by going over to where it's on the left side, and we'll set that up too. We'll go to solo mode, and there you go. And for this project, we will not be using the preset or the navigation panels or any of the left side panels. So you can go into here. There's this little icon right here that you can click on, and it will hide your panel. Now, let's get started. But before we do that, we'll hide this panel as well. There we go. Give us as much room as we can. So to start, I'm going to go into resetting this photo. And what we have here is the basic image came out of camera. Now, I am shooting in RAW on a Canon 80D. So what I do is I'm going to press the auto just to start to see how that looks. And it gives us a baseline of setup. If you like that, you can keep that as a base. Basically what I do is I hit the auto to get a basic exposure of my composition. Now, my next thing I do is I like to just play around with look at my shadows and highlights within the histogram. As you notice on this one, the highlights are a little spiked. So to describe the histogram real quick, is anything on this side over here is your darks. On your left side is all your darks. And on the right side is all your highlights. So if you want to adjust the highlights, you go and change the highlights, and we want to get those correct. So you want to bring that closer. The best way I do it personally, to bring that back here, is clicking on the highlights and just dragging them till they're in frame, and that leaving that where it's at. Now, a cool trick I learned, we will show you, that will give this a lot of dynamics, is taking your blacks and dropping them down and giving your blacks real crispy blacks and bringing your highlights up, so it gives that more like texture. Now take your clarity slider and bring that way up, but bring your dehazing kind of a little bit lower, and your texture, play around with your texture and your clarity slider. Once you get it to where you like it and it looks decent, I think I'll bring the contrast up a little bit. We're going to go into the tone curve tab. Now watch, as I open the tone curve tab, that your basic tab is going to close. Did you notice that? Before, when we were using the panel layout, we were getting the tone curve and the basic panel to stay open together, which was cluttering our work area. So now I'm going to show you a really cool trick. This one's going to change a little bit. But first, we're going to go back into our Basics tab, and I just noticed we're going to drop that saturation down just a little bit and give it that. We're going to try to go for that faded look. Back in the tone curves, we are going to add a center curve right there on top, and we're going to add another center curve right there. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull this one up a little bit like this. Just above, what you want to do is you're going to pull it just above your histogram. Now take your, and create another dot, pull it down like that, and then another dot to bring it up like this. And just play around with the first dot down here. And gives us a little more. I think we are getting a little too much highlight in this one. So I'm going to go back to the Basics tab. And this is where you got to be a little more careful. I'm also going to drop my blues. And we will go into the Lens Correction tab. And again, we were using a Sigma 28 to 70, and we're going to take out that, and that automatically right there took out our distortion, which means now we have to go back into the Exposure tab and drop our exposure ever so slightly. Our whites need to come down a lot. Shadows can come up, and our highlights need to be watched out. And again, when we go back to our tone curves, we are going to pull out this tone curve just a little bit to drop out that contrast. There you go. And that's basically our image right there. Kind of gives it that HDR tone look. Let's try this again by going to another image. All right, let's try this again by going to another image. We will go and select another image right here in our setup. Let's pick this one. It's a cool macro shot I took of a flower. We will go into that. First, we're going to go down to Lens Correction, enable those settings, and go down to the Canon 50mm, because generally speaking, when I do macro shots, I use a 50mm. Let's go there, and then we'll go to Basics, and we'll go to Autocorrect, and that'll bring up the brightness. Sometimes that works, and sometimes it doesn't. We'll also go and correct our white balance. This one calls for a little bit warmer image, so we'll pull it in little warms. We'll also bring our saturation up just a hair. Pull out some of those purples. We'll go the vibrance down. We'll bring the clarity up to bring some of that texture up into those flowers. And we'll pull down the... bring some of that texture up in there. And the dehaze, we will bring some of that dehazing in. And just to make it a little easier, we'll put some more pinks in there to bring those colors out. Then we're going to go to the Hsl Color Tab. Let's go to this one. And we'll go to the saturation of the purples. And you're wondering why I'm dropping this down to give it that flatter, more tingent look. We're going to actually take the yellows and pop those out a little bit more. Carry those out a lot more. And the oranges, and we're going to bring the colors of this one out with the reds. Then we're going to go to the tone curve, and we're going to give it that old faded look by pulling our tone curves up a little bit and dropping down here. It's a matter of flavor and taste at this point. And then, to make it a little better, we are going to go down into the Basics tab one more time and drop our blacks all the way down. And our shadows are going to be dropped all the way down. Maybe not. And then we will go to our Detail tab and add a little bit of sharpening into this. And then we'll go to our Effects tab and pull up some of the amount of vignetting. Now notice if I pull it to the right, it'll go white. If I pull it to the left, it'll go red. Or go black, I should say. And there we will keep it at that. And that's how you do some editing tricks in Lightroom. Thank you for watching today's episode. Please like, subscribe, and comment down below. And don't forget to hit that bell icon to get notified of when we are doing more videos in the future.